Rome, the Eternal City, the place where Ezio Auditore wrested control away from the corrupt Borgias and rebuilt the Brotherhood in Assassin's Creed Brotherhood. Let's take a walk around Rome at the beginning of the 16th century to learn a bit about the city's rich and storied history. Before we dive in, it's important to mention that with more than 2,000 years of history, Rome is filled with more ancient landmarks, Renaissance monuments, and influential people that can ever be covered in a single video. Let's start with the most colossal monument in Rome, the Flavian Amphitheater. You probably know it better by its nickname, the Colosseum. Construction on the Colosseum began in 72 CE under Emperor Vespasian as a way to appease the Roman public. To separate himself from his hated, self-obsessed predecessor Nero, Vespasian built the amphitheater directly on top of Nero's personal man-made lake. Oddly enough, we have Nero to thank for the building's famous nickname. While Vespasian was comfortable tearing down Nero's lake, he wasn't about to destroy the colossal statue of him erected nearby. When it became necessary to start differentiating between amphitheaters, Romans quickly began referring to the Flavian Amphitheater as the one near the Colossus, and thus, the Colosseum was born. The amphitheater could accommodate more than 50,000 spectators and played host to all manner of entertainment, from gladiator fights and animal hunts to musicals and plays. It could even be filled with water for mock naval battles. By the time Ezio visits, the Colosseum had seen better days. While the majority of the destruction was due to a 14th century earthquake, the building would have been in far better shape if not for stone thieves. During Rome's dark days, after the sacking by the Visigoths, and even up and through Ezio's time, the Colosseum was used as a glorified quarry. After all, why travel all the way up to the mountains of Tivoli for travertine stone when there's a giant pile of it in the middle of your city? It wasn't until 1749, when Pope Benedict XIV consecrated the site and declared it sacred, that the material theft stopped. In the 16th century, Rome was a shadow of its former self. More than a millennium removed from its heights during antiquity, and about a century away from the grandeur and overindulgence of the Baroque period, the city, like many of its landmarks, could have used some renovating. Thankfully, Ezio was a patron of the arts, and had plenty of coin to spare. Rome was rebuilt through the patronage of wealthy families in the Catholic Church, so surely an auditoria would have contributed to the renovations.
Isn't she a thing of beauty?
Very impressive.
If you want to look at one of the most pristine ancient monuments in Rome, look no further than the Pantheon. Originally constructed in 72 BCE by Marcus Agrippa, Emperor Augustus's right-hand man, the current iteration of the building was constructed under Emperor Hadrian's rule in 125 CE. Take a look at the building, and you'll notice that Hadrian still gives credit to its original patron, Agrippa, right on the temple's entablature. Part temple to the Roman gods and part throne room for Hadrian, the Pantheon survived the rise of Christianity the way most pagan temples did. It was converted into a church. For as simple as the Pantheon looks with its circular interior, the building's structure is incredibly complex and centuries ahead of its time. To this day, it remains the largest unreinforced concrete dome in the world. Roman engineers used a variety of tricks to build up the dome, including removing material from the dome's center, its weakest point, to create an oculus. They also changed the weight and thickness of the concrete mixture along the dome, ensuring that the concrete at the top was lighter than the concrete at the base. That's not easy to do. As the first Assassin's Creed to feature a single massive urban environment, Brotherhood's Rome was a chance for Ubisoft Montreal to showcase environmental diversity within a single map. While they may have taken some artistic liberties when it comes to scale and distances, they used real-world historical development to justify their decisions. Take a look at the southwest portion of the map, and you'll see it contains many of the city's ancient ruins and monuments, including the Forum, Rome's ancient city center. Venture further north, and you'll encounter the city's medieval portion, with utilitarian brown and white buildings. Head towards the northwest, closer to the Vatican, and you'll find a city dominated by churches and castles, signaling the future of Rome as a centerpiece for Catholic Baroque art and architecture. Speaking of the Catholic Baroque, the game kicks off with one of Catholicism's most famous buildings, St. Peter's Basilica. While construction of the current iteration of the building, designed by architect Donato Bramante, had only just begun at Ezio's time and wouldn't be completed for more than 100 years, the building is a constant fixture in the Roman skyline. As the biggest church in the world at the time, St. Peter's was the embodiment of Catholic grandeur and excess. And while you'll get to explore its iconic Sistine Chapel, you won't get to see Michelangelo's famous ceiling or his huge Last Judgment fresco, since he didn't start painting either of them until 1508, a few years after the game takes place. Nearby, you'll find the Castel Sant'Angelo, a monument just outside the Vatican City. At the time, the building served as a defensive fortress for the Vatican, and came in handy during the sacking of Rome in 1527 by the mutinous troops of the Holy Roman Emperor Charles V. A pivotal mission early on in Brotherhood sees Ezio free Caterina Sforza from a prison cell in the Castel. This was inspired by real-world events, as Sforza was imprisoned in the building's basement for more than a year after being accused of attempting to poison Rodrigo Borgia. The building's origins are actually much less militaristic. It was originally constructed by Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century CE to serve as a mausoleum for his family. Brotherhood's Rome isn't just buildings and monuments. It was also influenced by some of history's most famous and infamous figures. Let's start with the Borgias. At the head of the house was Rodrigo Borgia, an infamously corrupt politician and Vatican vice-chancellor. In 1492, he outmaneuvered his opponents in the College of Cardinals to become Pope Alexander VI. During this time, popes had nearly as much political power as religious power, meaning they often had free reign to do whatever they wanted. Borgia wasn't the first pope to have mistresses and illegitimate children, but he was the first to acknowledge them as his offspring, and even made his son Cesare a cardinal at the age of 18. When Cesare's brother Giovanni died, Cesare took over his command of the papal army and started to accumulate and conquer lands in central and northern Italy. When Rodrigo died in 1503, the new pope, Julius II, stripped Cesare of his titles and threw him in jail for nearly 3 years. But Cesare's time as papal commander made an impact, most notably on Niccolò Machiavelli. In fact, it's believed that Cesare even influenced Machiavelli's seminal literary work, The Prince.
We cannot use the stables here.
Oh, they will at the Borgia's law now?
What are you implying, Ezio?
Assassin's Creed fans know Machiavelli as the secret-dealing assassin spy, but in reality he was a man of many skills. A prototypical Renaissance man, Machiavelli was an important politician, philosopher, humanist, and writer. He spent much of his adult life as a government official in Florence, but today is remembered mostly for The Prince. Considered one of the earliest written works of political philosophy, The Prince focused on what Machiavelli deemed to be the brutal but effective methods of ruling. It inspired the modern usage of the word Machiavellian to describe someone who's underhanded and scheming, and even helped shape the current negative sentiment towards politicians. You can really see where Cesare's influence came in on this one.
Once our enemies are dead, we can speak of vaults and gods and ancient places. You should have killed him. We're sure to suffer for it.
Rome's history spans thousands of years, and Ezio's brief time there is just a snapshot of the Eternal City. If you want to learn more, explore the world of Assassin's Creed Brotherhood and consult the in-game database. For more videos like this, subscribe to this channel and visit us at news.ubisoft.com.